Another figure that had been mentioned on this podcast a lot had been Sean Christie. And in episode 110, Sean was the president of events and nightlife for MGM. And he came on the show just a couple of days after the closing of Chaos Nightclub, a huge venue here in Las Vegas. And while a lot of people in nightlife made memes and rejoiced in the closing of Chaos, Sean shared his own opinion on the situation.
I'm not here to really promote anything, but it ties in nicely in terms of talking about some of the fun things. And then it just so happened that, it fell on the day after Chaos closed, which again, the other interesting thing is in nightlife and nightclubs, even if I'm so friendly with Jason Strauss and Noah Tepperberg and Dave Grutman and all the people that we compete against, so the thing is you want to win. But what strikes me is really over the past couple days is I find it, really the great things about Twitter and Instagram, so you can see great places and hear great DJs and see great design and kind of peek behind the curtain on the hottest parties and hotels.
Right.
I love that part about it, but actually what I don't like about it is, there's all these people who literally Thanksgiving is 2 weeks away. They have families. Christmas and the holidays are right here. And the New Year's coming. Thankfully, like pool clubs are doing their auditions soon and stuff like that. But honest to God, it really disheartens me when I would rather rally. So two things. I'd rather rally around the people at Chaos that lost their jobs. By the way, everyone's sitting there saying, hey, these guys walked around beating their chest and saying how great they were and they got the new stuff. Well, what the hell are they supposed to do? That as a promoter, you're supposed to go out and say, hey, come to my place. We built something really cool and great. Some people who are skilled and have been around a long time know how to do it in a way that is probably more easily digestible so you don't look like a douche or come across poorly or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, who cares? I mean, the thing is that I don't want to attack people because they took a chance on something, by the way, that is pretty cool. It just didn't work out. I mean, that nightclub, even though I just got through telling you that there's nothing new, I'll tell you, it's one of the best nightclubs in the city for sure, meaning the way it looks, the way it feels. And the pool, again, that statue I thought was a huge, kind of ballsy move to put that giant piece of art. And so for me, big swings, big misses sometimes. But again, I go back to the idea that it's a home run. So my only point is I just wish this community in general and in Las Vegas would more rally around the people that lost their jobs and take the opportunity to make memes about, whatever they're doing at Chaos and all the people who are there and all that stuff. I'll tell you what, I think that's total bullshit. And I just wish that, and again, I'm not sitting here on my high horse, but again, if you have a friend that has a family, I got a 14-year-old daughter, and they lose their job before the holidays, and it's not their fault. And by the way, it's no one's fault. It's really no one's fault. They just have a missed business opportunity that didn't work out. But instead of, pounding on these people that whether they're at the top or they're a waitress or whatever, you know what? I wish people had more empathy and sympathy for those people, because whether it's the holidays, which is 2 weeks away, imagine being unemployed and now not having a paycheck and it's Thanksgiving. And again, that's no one's fault. It was a missed opportunity. So my point on the day after the Chaos closes is that, I just wish that people would have a little bit, would feel a little bit and rally around all the people that worked there, including the people that were beating their chests saying they were going to be the best. If you're not trying to be the best, you're not trying hard enough. That is a fact.
They say there's two sides to every story, and while the guys had Sean Christie on the show, they had to ask him about an event that he was a part of. This made global national news. DJ Jazzy Jeff kicked off stage mid-set during a DJ AM tribute event in Las Vegas. And before we hear Sean's side, we're going to head to episode 17, where Shecky Green recalls his version of events of that night.
There was a very famous scene where DJ Jazzy Jeff got pulled. Do you remember that story?
You know, D Miles was asking.
Yeah, that was the question.
That's the question you're going to ask.
Yeah,
Okay.
but thanks for even bringing that up.
Yeah.
Made it a lot easier. So
Yeah,
he was nervous to ask about that.
No, that was definitely the most frustrating moment in my win experience that night, for sure. Because what happened is, and I'll be totally honest in telling the story, and I'm friends with many people involved, okay? Basically, Jazzy Jeff, it was an AM tribute night. So there was a lot of people there wearing AM shirts.
I was there that night, yeah.
And there was posters and there was like signs and there was everything. It was AM night. And it wasn't too long after he died. It was like maybe a year after he died. I think it was 1 year later.
Yeah.
I think it was the 1 year anniversary.
I think so too, yeah.
And Jazzy Jeff was the headliner, and there were other DJs opening, and it was people that knew him. So it was, I think it was Vice, and it was
Dig Dug.
Yeah. It was Dig Dug, and I think Justin Hoffman even played a little bit, and there was some other people, and Milo
was there.
Yeah. And so then Jazzy Jeff comes on, and his set, for whatever reason, is low energy. Now, I'll be totally honest. It wasn't a high energy set. I remember he was playing Genuine, My Pony remix, some remix of My Pony, but it was slow. That's a slow song, actually. And I remember like some of the crowd were fine, like probably 60% of the crowd normal. But there was a little bit of antsiness because we're starting to get into the EDM era.
Right.
So hearing that starts to sound like
old.
It doesn't fit.
Yeah, it just sounded old.
It sounds
right,
old.
right.
And it sounds slow.
The funny thing is he could do that set now and it would be even more relevant now because everyone's like obsessed with the 90s and like, early 2000 records,
So basically, long story short is that I'm asked to pull Jazzy Jeff, and I said no, I would not do it. And they were like, if you don't pull Jazzy Jeff, we're going to do it. And I was like, well, I'm not doing it. So they sent the security over.
Shit.
To some big security guy who doesn't know anything. And honestly, and I'm going to throw him under the bus, he can say he was just following orders, which he was, okay? He goes over with the security, and I was standing helplessly, and they watch, and they pull Jazzy Jeff. They make him stop. They make him stop DJing. And he has to leave, and they make him kind of leave the venue even. And it was so embarrassing. He was there to pay tribute to AM. Like, it was an AM party. And, like, it's Jazzy Jeff, And it was like, and then that story got out.
Right.
And people started to, it got made it to, like, Page 6, New York Post, and places like that. And it became a story. But then, if you remember, he also got pulled somewhere else, like around that same time.
Wasn't it around Z Trip or something?
Yeah, it was in Kansas.
Yeah.
It was around the same time, was it?
2010.
Really?
Yeah, around the same time he got pulled somewhere else. So like it became, in a weird way, it became a story about Jazzy Jeff. Like, why does he keep getting pulled? And I don't know why. I mean, in that case, the reason was we had entered the EDM era. It was the first year of the EDM era, and it was very frustrating. And yeah,
I mean, two things. Well, it was definitely a sign of like something is going wrong when you're pulling Jazzy Jeff, right? And it's like two signs. It's like two signs of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It happened like you said, like back to back almost, and then
in Kansas was because he was playing hip hop and like a rock bar.
It was
mall.
a festival.
Yeah, it was
a festival.
Yeah.
It was an outdoor festival with Z Trip. And Z Trip was actually embarrassed about it. I believe.
Yeah, Z Trip was like, I played Bone Thugs and stuff like that, and they didn't pull me.
But I want to say, did you maybe regret that maybe you should have said it, like instead of had the security come in?
Yeah. Luckily, I think my friendship with him survived. Like, but for a while. Yeah, I regretted a lot of things about it. I mean, but I also didn't want to be the one. No, I was like, no, I'm not. I've known Jazzy Jeff before I knew the win.
Right.
I knew Jazzy Jeff a little bit in Philly in the 80s, you know what I mean? So I go back further with him than I do with the Win guys. So I'm not going to jeopardize that for someone's opinion about music, you know. And the truth was, he was playing a slow tempo. Like, it wasn't the right choice. Like, it was.
All right.
So, but the right thing. Right. Go. You're gonna say.
No, I was there that night.
Yeah.
He was doing a set that he usually does.
Right.
It does. It wasn't anything different. It was a Jazzy Jeff
Did he
set.
have mad skills on the
No,
mic with him?
No,
I
he
don't
didn't.
think he was there that night.
No.
Fuck.
That
You know-
probably suffered because of that a little bit.
Could have been. Yeah.
He's so technical, and I think he needs that mad skills there just to
Great MC, bro.
interact with the crowd.
Yeah, he doesn't really
Yeah.
talk at all.
He doesn't
Yeah.
interact,
Yeah.
and he's so technical. Like, he's doing such technical shit that
Yeah.
he's very serious. You know what I
Right,
mean?
yes.
And it's just
Actually, you know what? Now that I remember to tell the whole story, I did actually go. Initially, I did go, but I didn't talk to him. I talked to his manager there, and I said, "Hey, man, they're starting to beef about the music not being the right. You know, you got to pick up the energy." And he's like, "You want me to tell him to pick up the tempo?" And I was like, "Yes, please tell him to pick up the tempo." So I did actually attempt to intervene,
Right.
with before the real shit hit the fan. I
Yeah.
tried to kind of like preempt the bad thing from happening. But he did tell him, but for whatever reason it didn't happen fast enough or whatever. You know how they are. They want the next they want to change something, they want it instantly. They want that record right now.
Yeah.
He's a skillful DJ who's trying to build up to something.
he's trying to transition
Yeah.
from
He's not going to throw in some song like just because some guy in a suit tells him to play
And
it.
I'm
you
going
know?
to tell you something. Transitioning from pony BPMs, which
Yeah.
is like what, like 80, 75?
Yeah.
In that clip, the R.O.A.D podcast bleeped the name of the person that Shecky held responsible for deciding to kick DJ Jazzy Jeff off of the stage. But Sean Christie reveals his decision making and whether he believes it was the right or wrong thing to do.
I've never gotten a clear story of what happened with Jazzy Jeff,
Yeah,
and I just wanted to hear it from you.
sure. So, I mean, the long story short, I think that is also an instance of, me and my immaturity, meaning that I used to be so quick to, act. And actually the truth was I didn't ever care who it was the truth. And so the thing is obviously, kind of looking back on my career, that was a regrettable moment. But really, it was a thing between Sheck and I in the sense that my expectation going into that evening, because if you remember, that was in EDM time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the way I remember it, and again, it's all good. Sheck and I are good. We had a lot of angst over it. I've apologized for it. And actually, it's one of the most regrettable moments in my career in terms of who cares? I should have just gone home. But at the end of the day, my expectation of that evening was that there was going to be the format was going to be kept intact, which, by the way, may be dumb of me to think that, somebody who does a certain thing is going to adapt or whatever. But going into that night, that was actually my expectation. And so I had felt like it had been made crystal clear before we did the booking, because I was like, look, I don't want to do it unless it's going to be that.
Right.
And so that was my recollection of that evening. And then what ended up happening was it wasn't that. And I'd also said to Sheck, which again was just really unfortunate, because, the best DJ I've ever heard in my entire life is DJ AM. It's not even, he was the best. I'm trying to put in context, which I'll bring it full circle, is trying to put anybody else even in kind of second place. I mean, there have been nights where I had maybe because of the crowd and the energy and the evening and stuff like that, maybe, there have been moments that are that exciting. But in terms of a DJ, I had really, so the unfortunate part of that about that night was it was because AM had passed, and obviously a huge fan, but I used to have a thing where I would snap, and it was just visceral, and it's really taken me a really long time to be much more centered. And I think those things, not to get too deep, but as I work on myself as an adult and I meditate and I read and, I have a better understanding about life in general. But at that moment, when my expectation for the DJ, and again, I had felt like it was clear, had not been met, I was just like, look, Shek, basically, if it's not going to happen and we're not going to do this, or whoever, I think it was Shecky, if X doesn't start happening, it is what it is, and he's going to have to come off.
Right.
And so that's what ended up happening, is he ended up coming off, and he handled it like a gentleman. By the way, he wasn't thrown out by the security of the club or anything like that. Just
That's a myth.
that was a myth. That part was a myth. The part that is correct was that I threw him out.
Uh-huh.
And, the next day there was such kind of upheaval about it, rightfully so. And it wasn't until the next day that I realized what I had done. And I was kind of like, oh my God, and so what started happening as a result of that, so Jeff, if you're listening, I apologize, and then I'm going to bring it back to Jeff, which is that what I really realized after that was when I'm having a bad night as it relates to the DJ, which of course there are going to be some good and some bad. And I'll give you one more, which is in my prime of, being so, it's really about being passionate. I'm really passionate about the DJ and the music and the crowd. If someone's playing something and it's working, I'm in, right? And on that night, actually, there was a group of DJs that were digging it, and I even got quoted on that. But as I looked out to 4,000 people, it was kind of like, hey, what's going on here? It was off,
right.
And that was my fault, not anyone else's. So I had one other, I think after that or before, I don't know if Shecky told the story about it with Treasure Fingers.
No.
So the interesting thing is Treasure Fingers, it's so stupid. And again, I was totally 100% at fault, just like I was at fault with Jeff. Treasure Fingers, I had never heard Barbra Streisand.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden I hear do-do-do-do-do-do-do, Barbra Streisand. And I'm looking at it.
That's a duck sauce record.
Yeah, duck sauce.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, then I was the only one who booked them. I booked them, and I paid $12,000 for the duck to come out. And I had duck sauce at Surrender because I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. But before anybody knew what it was, finally, I had, maybe you were there too, or maybe it was more Sheck, but I had a run of the format because when EDM came out, we were still trying to get people to play it consistently, and we'd have DJs come in and do like an open format set. And I was like, look, it's an EDM club. You're either going to play it or not. Everybody would say yes. And then I think that if your skill set is X, you go back to maybe what you feel good about because you know how to rock a party.
Yeah.
So I had a bunch of those instances where I had just gotten fed up. So Treasure Fingers, the very first song, he drops duck sauce, and I threw him off. He didn't even get to the end of the song, and I threw him off too. And I was just basically saying to everybody, and again, it's all regrettable, but I was saying to everybody, like, look, if you're not going to play the format,
Yeah.
Sheriff Sean's going to come and throw you off. And again, I'm just saying that. And again, all those things are stupidity. And what I learned out of all that stuff is if I'm having a bad night, you know what? It's all ego. And it's all my ego. And actually what I need to do is just go home and restart the day. Because at the end of the day, the DJ is an artist. And so there has to be creative freedom and, ability to express yourself. Mm-hmm. And why am I the arbiter of that? I'm the arbiter because I'm the operator of the club, and I've, generally speaking, been right. But now when I have bad nights, actually, and I've had some at On the Record as well, where I literally, I thought someone was going to be good, and they just really were kind of dropping an egg, and I was like, oh God. I've learned to go home. And so over the years now, what I do is I fall back on that and I go home. But, as I said, the Jazzy Jeff thing of everything in my 20-year career is probably my most regrettable and the thing that is hard for me to talk about. But it is what it is. The past is the past. And then now coming full circle, the best night that I've ever had at On the Record was Jazzy Jeff. I mean, honest to God, he played on a Saturday in like June,
around June 18th, I think.
Yep, Saturday in June,
19th or something.
and it was like magic. And I was just like, wow, can you believe?
Full circle.
And the other great part is Shecky was there hanging out, and I was just like, you know what? This kind of feels like, putting a bad incident behind. And actually, I almost felt like that night, I almost felt like I had to go up to Jeff and like acknowledge it in some way. Mm-hmm. But I was like, it's not appropriate, And then I was just thinking to myself, you know what? It was, I think anybody who was there, I don't know who was there, but for anybody who was there, I was kind of thinking to myself, this is a better way to end it. Like, this is the appropriate way to put this, as a bad incident and bad chapter in my career. So again, always apologize. And the other funny part is we had Questlove here, and I just remember him blasting me on Twitter. He didn't know who I was, calling me like whatever, this like loser club promoter, and everybody was blasting me. And by the way, probably deservedly so. And then I remember I got called to the president of Wynn's office at that time, and basically being like what happened? Like, how is this like a major news story? It had gone viral on Twitter, and all that stuff. And I actually didn't understand the power of social media until that day.
It was just the beginning, actually.
It was the beginning of Twitter.
Yeah.
Next thing I knew, I woke up, and really I was just like, wait, what's going on? I mean, yes, it was horrible and all that stuff, but I don't remember it being like, I took 9 security guards and I like threw Jazzy Jeff out of the club or anything like that.
Like
I remember
Fresh
it
Prince of
being, again, it was a bad situation, which again was 100% my fault. But actually, that was one of the days where I realized the power of social media, because it seemed like the entire world. And then I knew, because that was when Cascade was doing his party. And I remember him texting me, and I get a text from Cascade being like, all it said was, "Hey, what happened last night?" And I'm looking at it, and I was like, question mark? I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
He's like, Jazzy Jeff, question mark. And I was like, I was just like, and so my response was whatever it was. But I'm like, how did you see about this? He's like, dude, Twitter, capital Twitter or something. And I was like, oh my God, everybody knows, he's like, oh yeah, everybody's talking about it. I'm like, oh boy, I'm going to go hide for a few days. And then I actually ended up, R.I.P., who I loved, Robin Leach too. That night I actually had to do an interview with Robin Leach and kind of try to set the record straight, which also came out bad. When I look even back on that interview that I did with Robin, which wasn't anything, I didn't say anything bad. I put my spin on it, if you will, which was honestly which was exactly what I just told you, probably, if you look it up and you were to put Las Vegas Sun, Robin Leach, Sean Christie, that type of thing. And, more important than that, meaning me, I screwed up that AM memorial, and I was such a diehard fan of his. And so it really wasn't even about Jeff. It was more about that I had, kind of screwed that up. And I still have the T-shirt from that night that we did.
I still have that T-shirt as well.
I still have it too. And it's in my closet. And actually, every time I look at it, I'm like, I think to myself, number one, I try not to forget about it, because I want it to be a lesson to, again, that's all ego. I mean, that's all ego. That's on me. So regardless of even the conversations that I did have with Shecky about that evening, who cares? It was about something else, and I made it about me. And so that was one of the best lessons that came at the expense of a lot of people that were having a tough time with something. And so the idea that I did that 10 years later, I sit here and it's embarrassing. It's the first time I've ever talked about it.
Oh, I appreciate it.
No, all good, because actually I'm glad I'm talking about it. Not to say that's right. I feel like I can only really talk about it because, and again, if Jeff were to hate me forever, I would get it. We never talked about it, but because he came here, he played, it was like one of the best nights ever. I kind of feel licensed 10 years later to kind of talk about it, and to say, and to also say that it, 100% my fault, regardless of anything.
Well, he posted on Instagram about that night, and he had a
Was
really
this
good
recently or after?
Right,
just
the day after
like the
the-
day after he did on the record.
Yeah, the
And-
right party with the wrong, whatever that. What did he say?
And it was actually touching. He
Oh, it
said,
was
"I've
really
always
good.
had I've had a rocky relationship with Las Vegas." And
yes, that's right.
But on the record does it right.
You're saying after the on the record?
Yeah.
After on the-
Oh
on the
yeah, I
record,
saw that.
Yeah, it was
Which was
really
great.
good.
No,
Which
but
was
the,
nice,
the,
yeah.
the tweet that came right after the incident,
the excess,
the surrender
it's
incident.
the surrender, yeah.
It was like the right party with the wrong, or something like he had said something that was like 5 words, and I saw it and I was like, ugh. I was like, he's 100 basically inferring it was the right thing at the wrong place. And so when I read the post on the record post that had said, this was like kind of the first time he'd been back, I was happy that in some way I was a part of that, because I had also felt responsible for the idea that, for all that time, that incident, had cast a shadow over, by the way, myself, in terms of a lot of DJs and my relationships with them. And actually, to tell you the truth, checking my relationship for a bit of time after that, I don't know how long, but there was a period of time where it damaged my relationship. So even on a personal level, I was really disappointed in myself as it related to me, because Shecky's one of my best friends in the entire world. He's like a brother. And so the idea, like, would I do that to my brother?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Why did I do it to Shecky? But again, in the moment, I just used to have a hair trigger, and I swear it didn't matter who it was. I mean, it could be, whoever. It just was, and it took all these years to mature and to realize that, again, who the hell am I? I mean, it's ego. So I try to put the ego, and as to end on a note reflecting on AM, which he would always say, which in his Twitter, which he would say, starve the ego, feed the soul.
Yeah.
So R.I.P. DJ AM.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And Avicii.
If you want to check the full episode of this clip, click the video on the left. Or if you'd like to continue watching more road clips, click the video on the right. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page and get updated on new clips and videos from R.O.A.D Podcast throughout the week. Peace.